Have you ever wondered why Jesus drank vinegar before he died? Discover the hidden meaning of vinegar in the Bible and how this simple act connects to ancient prophecies and profound symbolism. In the final moments of the crucifixion, as Jesus expressed his thirst, a seemingly simple gesture became one of the most intriguing episodes in Christian history. A Roman soldier offered Jesus a sponge soaked in vinegar. This act, which at first glance may seem cruel, hides layers of meaning that invite us to reflect more deeply on Christ's sacrifice and the complexities of human nature. In this text, we will explore the symbolism behind this gesture and how it relates to ancient prophecies, practices of the time, and the divine plan of redemption. Get ready for a fascinating journey that goes beyond the surface of the events at Calvary. Our investigation begins centuries before the crucifixion with a dramatic prophecy written by King David in Psalm 69. In this ancient text, we find a vivid description of the scene that would unfold at Calvary. They gave me gall for my food, and for my thirst they gave me vinegar to drink. Psalm 69:21. These words, written long before Jesus' birth, echoed surprisingly at the moment of the crucifixion. The Roman soldier, lifting the vinegar-soaked sponge to Jesus' exhausted lips, was not merely performing an act of apparent cruelty. Unknowingly, he was fulfilling an ancient prophecy, weaving the threads of the divine plan amidst human suffering. By accepting the vinegar, Jesus was not just quenching a physical thirst. Symbolically, he was bearing the weight of humanity's sins. The bitterness of the vinegar became a tangible representation of the bitterness of sin and human suffering that Jesus voluntarily took upon himself. This fulfillment of prophecy reminds us that even in the darkest moments of human history, there is a greater plan at work. The precision with which David's words were fulfilled serves as a testament to divine providence, showing that even the seemingly insignificant details of the crucifixion were part of a larger design. The vinegar offered to Jesus on the cross carries a deep symbolism that goes beyond the mere fulfillment of a prophecy. In many ancient cultures, including the Hebrew one, vinegar was associated with bitterness and suffering. Its acidity and strong flavor made it a perfect metaphor for life's hardships and pains. When Jesus accepted the vinegar, he symbolically embraced not only the physical pain of crucifixion, but also all the anguish and despair of humanity. Every drop of vinegar that touched his lips represented a drop of human sin and suffering that he willingly absorbed into his immaculate being. This gesture invites us to reflect on the depth of Christ's love. In a moment of extreme agony, when seeking relief or comfort would be understandable, Jesus chose to accept yet another dose of bitterness. This choice powerfully illustrates his infinite compassion and unwavering commitment to the mission of redemption. In this context, vinegar becomes a paradoxical symbol. On one hand, it represents human cruelty and indifference to suffering. On the other, it transforms into an instrument of divine love, fulfilling an ancient prophecy and advancing the plan of salvation. While many interpret the offering of vinegar as an attempt to humiliate Jesus, there is an alternative perspective that deserves our attention. To understand this possibility, we need to delve into the historical context and practices of the time. In ancient Rome, vinegar was not just seen as a condiment or a symbol of bitterness. It had important practical uses, especially for soldiers. A common drink among Roman troops was posca, a mixture of water and vinegar. This drink was appreciated for several reasons. Water purification. Vinegar helped purify water, making it safer to drink. Refreshing properties. In hot climates, posca was considered a refreshing drink. Physical endurance. It was believed that posca helped soldiers endure long periods of physical exertion. Additionally, vinegar was known for its antibacterial properties and was often used to clean and disinfect wounds. Considering that Jesus had been severely flogged before the crucifixion, it is possible that the soldier, by offering the vinegar, was trying in some way to alleviate Jesus' suffering or clean his wounds. This perspective invites us to consider the complexity of human nature. Even amidst an act of extreme brutality like crucifixion, there is the possibility of a gesture of compassion, however rudimentary. The Roman soldier, trained to be an instrument of execution, may have found within himself an impulse of humanity, offering the only relief he knew. This interpretation does not diminish Jesus' suffering, nor deny the cruelty of the crucifixion. However, it reminds us that even in the darkest situations, human compassion can manifest in unexpected ways. To fully understand the significance of vinegar in the crucifixion, it is important to consider an earlier episode when Jesus refused a similar offer. Before being taken to Calvary, the soldiers offered Jesus a mixture of vinegar and myrrh. Myrrh, an aromatic resin, was known for its analgesic properties. Mixed with vinegar, it formed a sort of primitive sedative that could alleviate pain and even numb the senses. It was common to offer this mixture to those condemned to crucifixion as a form of mercy, reducing their consciousness during the ordeal. However, Jesus refused this initial offer. This refusal is deeply significant and reveals much about the nature of his sacrifice, full awareness. By refusing the narcotic, Jesus chose to face the crucifixion with full awareness, feeling every moment of pain and suffering. Fulfillment of the mission. The refusal demonstrates his determination to fulfill his mission to the end, without seeking relief or escape. Solidarity with human suffering. By experiencing pain in its entirety, Jesus fully identified with humanity's suffering. Conscious testimony. Remaining lucid allowed Jesus to utter his final words on the cross, which hold profound theological and spiritual significance. This initial refusal of vinegar with myrrh contrasts with the later acceptance of pure vinegar. While the first offering was meant to ease his suffering, the second was linked to the fulfillment of prophecy and the completion of his redemptive mission. The use of vinegar as a symbol is not limited to the episode of the crucifixion. Throughout the Bible, we find various metaphors involving vinegar that help us better understand its symbolic meaning. In Proverbs 25:20 we read, "Like one who takes away a garment on a cold day, or like vinegar poured on a wound, is one who sings songs to a heavy heart." This passage uses vinegar as a metaphor for inappropriate or insensitive actions. Just as pouring vinegar on a wound would cause more pain, singing cheerfully to someone who is suffering would be a lack of empathy. This metaphor teaches us about the importance of sensitivity and compassion in human relationships. In another passage, Proverbs 10:26 says, "Like vinegar to the teeth and smoke to the eyes, so is a sluggard to those who send him." Here, vinegar is used to illustrate the discomfort and irritation caused by laziness or lack of diligence. Just as vinegar causes an unpleasant sensation in the teeth, a lazy person causes frustration and discomfort for those who depend on them. These biblical metaphors of vinegar share a common theme. They represent unpleasant or bitter experiences in human life. By associating vinegar with these experiences, the Bible creates a rich symbolic language that helps us understand and express complex emotional and spiritual realities. When we consider these metaphors in the context of the crucifixion, the vinegar offered to Jesus gains additional layers of meaning. It not only fulfills a prophecy, but also becomes a tangible symbol of all the bitterness and suffering that Jesus was facing and absorbing on behalf of humanity. To deepen our understanding of the symbolism of vinegar in the Bible, it is interesting to consider another bitter substance mentioned in the Scriptures: wormwood. In the book of Revelation, we find a powerful image involving this plant known for its intensely bitter taste. Revelation 8:10-11 says, "The third angel sounded his trumpet, and a great star, blazing like a torch, fell from the sky on a third of the rivers and on the springs of water. The name of the star is wormwood. A third of the waters turned bitter, and many people died from the waters that had become bitter. This apocalyptic passage uses wormwood as a symbol of judgment and bitterness. The star called wormwood contaminates the waters, making them deadly to many. This image of waters poisoned by the bitterness of wormwood echoes the symbolism of the vinegar offered to Jesus on the cross. Just as wormwood in Revelation represents bitterness leading to physical death, the vinegar in the crucifixion symbolizes the bitterness of human and spiritual suffering that Jesus faced. However, there is a crucial difference. While wormwood in Revelation brings destruction, the vinegar accepted by Jesus becomes an instrument of redemption. This connection between wormwood and vinegar invites us to deep reflection on the consequences of sin and the cost of redemption. The bitter taste of both substances reminds us of the reality of suffering and death brought into the world by sin. At the same time, Jesus' voluntary acceptance of the vinegar transforms this symbol of bitterness into a sign of hope and salvation. The image of wormwood in Revelation also prompts us to think about the global impact of Christ's sacrifice. Just as the star wormwood affects a third of the earth's waters, Jesus' sacrifice on the cross has cosmic implications, offering redemption not just for individuals, but potentially for all creation. Another interesting aspect to consider in our investigation of the vinegar in the crucifixion is its relation to the Nazirite vow. This vow, mentioned in the book of Numbers in the Old Testament, was a special form of consecration to God. Numbers 6:1-4 describes some of the restrictions of the Nazirite vow. The Lord said to Moses, "Speak to the Israelites and say to them, if a man or woman wants to make a special vow, a vow of dedication to the Lord as a Nazirite, they must abstain from wine and other fermented drink. As long as they remain under their Nazirite vow, they must not eat anything that comes from the grapevine, not even the seeds or skins." This passage specifically mentions the abstinence from products of the vine, which would include vinegar. Some scholars have questioned whether the offering of vinegar to Jesus on the cross could have been an attempt to make him break a possible Nazirite vow. However, it is important to note that there is no direct evidence in the Gospels that Jesus took a Nazirite vow. In fact, on several occasions, we see Jesus consuming wine, which would be incompatible with the vow's restrictions. The question of the Nazirite vow in relation to Jesus remains a topic of debate among scholars. Some argue that his association with Nazareth could indicate some form of Nazirite consecration, while others see it as a linguistic coincidence unrelated to the vow. Regardless of whether Jesus made a Nazirite vow or not, the mention of this practice helps us better understand the cultural and religious context of the time. The Nazirite vow was a form of total dedication to God, involving personal sacrifice and abstinence. In this sense, we can see a parallel between the spirit of the Nazirite vow and Jesus' mission. Although not limited by the specific restrictions of the vow, Jesus lived a life of total dedication to God, culminating in the ultimate sacrifice on the cross. Vinegar, in this context, can be seen not as a violation of a specific vow, but as a symbol of Jesus' total commitment to his redemptive mission. By accepting the vinegar, Jesus demonstrates his willingness to absorb all the bitterness of sin and human suffering, fulfilling his divine mission more deeply than any human vow could require. Returning to the scene of the crucifixion, it is important to consider the possibility that the offering of vinegar was a more complex gesture than initially assumed. Although traditionally interpreted as an act of mockery, there is a possibility that the Roman soldier acted with more compassionate intent. To understand this perspective, we need to consider the medical knowledge and practices of the time. Antibacterial properties. Vinegar was known for its antibacterial properties and was often used to clean wounds. Thirst relief. In a hot climate and after hours of suffering, vinegar diluted in water, posca, could provide some relief from extreme thirst. Mild stimulant. Vinegar could act as a mild stimulant, potentially prolonging Jesus' consciousness in his final moments. Common practice. Offering Pascha to the crucified was a common practice among Roman soldiers, not necessarily seen as an additional act of cruelty. Considering these factors, it is possible that the soldier, in offering the vinegar, was following a basic impulse of human compassion. Even amidst the brutality of the crucifixion, this gesture could represent a rudimentary attempt to alleviate Jesus' suffering. This interpretation does not diminish the gravity or theological significance of the crucifixion. On the contrary, it adds a layer of complexity to the narrative, reminding us of the duality of human nature. Even in circumstances of extreme cruelty, the capacity for compassion can emerge in unexpected ways. Moreover, this perspective invites us to reflect on how we judge the actions of others, especially in situations of extreme stress or conflict. What may seem at first glance like an act of cruelty may contain more complex nuances of intention and meaning. To deepen our understanding of the vinegar episode in the crucifixion, it is crucial to explore the historical and cultural context in which this event occurred. The use of vinegar in Roman society at the time was much broader and more significant than we might initially imagine. Pascha, the soldier's drink. The Pascha, a mixture of water and vinegar, was a common drink among Roman soldiers. It had several advantages: water purification. Vinegar helped make water safer to drink, especially during military campaigns. Hydration. Pascha was considered more effective than plain water for maintaining hydration in hot climates. Nutritional supplement. Vinegar provided some nutrients and was considered beneficial for health. Medicinal use. Vinegar was widely used for medicinal purposes in antiquity. Disinfectant. Its antibacterial properties made it useful for cleaning wounds. Fever treatment. It was believed that vinegar could help lower body temperature. Pain relief. In some situations, vinegar was applied to relieve muscle or joint pain. Cultural symbolism. In both Roman and Jewish culture, vinegar carried symbolic meanings. Preservation. Vinegar was used to preserve food, symbolizing durability and resilience. Transformation. The fermentation process that produces vinegar was seen as a metaphor for change and transformation. Purification. In some ritual contexts, vinegar was associated with purification. Understanding this context, we can see that the offering of vinegar to Jesus was not an isolated or purely cruel act. It was a gesture rooted in the cultural practices and knowledge of the time. The Roman soldier, in offering the vinegar, was acting within a framework of references that included both the practical use and symbolic meaning of this substance. This broader understanding invites us to a more nuanced interpretation of the event. The vinegar on the cross becomes a point of intersection between the mundane and the divine, between common practice and prophetic fulfillment, between possible human compassion and the divine plan of redemption. As we reach the end of our exploration of the significance of the vinegar offered to Jesus on the cross, we encounter a profound and complex question. Was this gesture an act of cruelty or a demonstration of compassion? The answer, as often happens in matters of deep historical and spiritual significance, is neither simple nor one-dimensional. The vinegar episode in the crucifixion reveals itself as a moment of paradox and complexity, reflecting the very nature of the human condition and the divine plan. The duality of the gesture. Cruelty. At first glance, offering vinegar to a dying man may seem like an act of mockery and disdain. Compassion. Considering the historical context and properties of vinegar, it may have been a rudimentary attempt to offer relief. Multifaceted symbolism, prophetic fulfillment. The vinegar fulfills the prophecy of Psalm 69, demonstrating the precision of the divine plan. Bitterness of sin. The vinegar symbolizes the bitterness of sin and suffering that Jesus voluntarily took upon himself. Transformation. Just as vinegar is the result of a transformation process, Jesus' suffering on the cross transforms the relationship between God and humanity. The complexity of human nature. The Roman soldier. His action reflects the complexity of human nature, capable of cruelty but also compassion, even in extreme circumstances. Jesus' response. By accepting the vinegar, Jesus demonstrates his full humanity and divinity, embracing suffering and fulfilling his mission. Lessons for our spiritual journey. Careful judgment. The episode teaches us not to judge others' actions hastily, recognizing that intentions may be more complex than they appear. Transformation of suffering. Just as Jesus transformed vinegar into an instrument of redemption, we are called to find meaning and growth in our own experiences of bitterness. Compassion in difficult circumstances. The soldier's possible act of compassion challenges us to maintain our humanity even in situations of extreme stress or conflict. The intersection of the divine and the human. The divine plan. The vinegar episode demonstrates how the divine plan of redemption unfolds through human actions, even when those actions seem insignificant or cruel. Human response. The Roman soldier's possible compassion illustrates how divine grace can operate through imperfect human gestures. In conclusion, the vinegar offered to Jesus on the cross reveals itself as a powerful and multifaceted symbol. It encapsulates the complexity of the human experience, the depth of divine love, and the intricate tapestry of the plan of redemption. This seemingly simple episode invites us to deep reflection on the nature of suffering, the power of compassion, and the mystery of divine redemption. As we contemplate the vinegar on the cross, we are challenged to look beyond appearances, to find meaning even in the most bitter experiences of life, and to recognize the presence of the divine in the most human and imperfect gestures. This moment in the history of salvation continues to teach us about the depth of God's love and the complexity of the human journey toward redemption. If you were intrigued by this exploration of the significance of vinegar in Jesus' life, don't miss our next video on what Jesus thought about money. Discover how biblical principles can be applied to everyday financial matters. I hope you enjoyed this journey through the symbolism and context behind the vinegar episode in the crucifixion. This seemingly simple moment in the biblical narrative reveals itself as a window into profound understandings of Christ's sacrifice, the complexity of human experience, and the depth of the divine plan of redemption. As we reflect on the vinegar offered to Jesus, we are invited to look at our own lives and experiences with new eyes. Where can we find meaning in moments of bitterness? How can we exercise compassion even in difficult circumstances? How can our actions, no matter how simple they may seem, be part of a greater plan? Remember, just as the vinegar on the cross transcended its literal meaning to become a powerful symbol of redemption, our own experiences of difficulty and suffering can be transformed into opportunities for growth, compassion, and connection with the divine. I invite you to share your reflections in the comments. How did this exploration of the significance of vinegar in the crucifixion impact your understanding of this historical event? What insights did you gain about your own spiritual journey? Together, we can continue to explore the depths of faith, finding meaning and inspiration in the narratives that shape our understanding of the divine and the human. Thank you for joining us on this journey of discovery and reflection.